Okay, welcome everyone. I hope that we have some more people, but we're going to make do with what we have here. So welcome to my session. I'm just going to give a brief land acknowledgement there that we are meeting on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So we're going to talk about exploring anxiety in young people this afternoon. And so here's how it's going to go. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction, then look at what anxiety is, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like, and what are some ideas that you can put into place or even work with teachers in your child's classroom to put into place. And I will send some resources along as well. And then I always like to do a final reflection, but it always depends on how many people are in the room. So I just want you to think about this for a minute. What are one or two words to describe how you feel as an adult dealing with an anxious child? That's assuming that you have an anxious child. You may not. And if you have a moment there, can you just put that into the chat? Just what your feelings are. And I'm not seeing a chat. Do you see a chat there? Can somebody give me a little yes or no?
Yes, I see the chat.
Okay, so just put a word or two how you feel as the adult dealing with a child, if you have a child dealing with anxiety. So go ahead. Yes, for sure. Common, nervous and stressed, stressful. Yeah. Unprepared. Interesting. Okay. So what you're feeling is very, very common. And so we're going to look at what anxiety actually is. It's an emotion, and it's characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure, rapid breathing and heart rate, loss of focus. So this is important for us to know because it's actually a physiological response. So when children or adults feel stress, it automatically puts us into the sympathetic nervous system. And when we're in the sympathetic nervous system, it promotes fight, flight, or freeze. But it also, now they're saying it also promotes fawning, which means trying to please people, which is an interesting addition to what we already know about it. Anxiety is not the same as fear. Even though we can sometimes mistake that, anxiety is considered future oriented. So the child or the adult is worrying about the future. And we're seeing that a lot in our world right now, given the amount of media attention we have to world events. It's long-acting response, broadly focused on a diffuse threat, whereas fear is an appropriate present-oriented expression of emotion. So in this moment, I'm afraid I'm going to get hit by a car. I'm afraid that the teacher in my classroom is going to start yelling or pop a test on us. And it can be a short-lived response to a clearly identifiable threat. But anxiety can manifest itself in various ways, impacting a person physically, mentally, and emotionally in their daily life. So just right now, think about a time when you felt anxious. You, as whether that was when you were a child or whether it's now, how did you feel when you felt anxious? And so again, this is a little bit of a chat waterfall. You put it in the chat and I'll be able to see what your feelings are as the person experiencing anxiety. Go ahead. Yes, that physiological response, right? I feel it physically, right? Anything else? So this is very common. And one of the, spiraling thoughts, 100%, because when we are anxious, our thoughts are whirling around in our head, and it is very difficult to control that. So what we want to understand, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is we want kids and adults, because what I'm saying today is really both kids and adults. We want them to make a mind-body connection. When I'm feeling spiraling thoughts or when my insides are tightening up, I want to make a connection to how I'm feeling it in my body, because that's very important information for us. And so the idea with anxiety, it looks like we can actually sometimes see physical symptoms. So the child who is restless, maybe they're trembling or fidgeting, pacing, sweating, blushing, rapid heartbeat, and tense muscles. Those are the physiological responses that we all have to stress, and they are out of our control until the point where we are able to make a mind-body connection, and then we settle in and start to deal with it. But the physiological part, the sympathetic nervous system, comes up without our control. In terms of how it manifests itself with behavior, we see avoidance, avoiding tasks, difficulty making decisions, and increased dependency on an adult, or it could also be on friends. There's a real need for reassurance, because in a child, they don't have the sophistication to really understand. And so they're looking for reassurance. They can be distracted. And then, as I said, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And their body language is going to show us. Maybe they have that furrowed brow. They're clenching their jaw. They're waking up in the morning and telling you their jaw hurts or they have a headache. They might appear preoccupied or distance, like looking into space kind of thing. And then they might also be overly alert, really looking at what's going on in my environment, trying to see and take everything in. In terms of what anxiety sounds like, we might hear it in their speech. So it might be rapid speech patterns, or we can hear quivering or a shaky voice. They might be pausing because their brains are kind of trying to process, or hesitations. And they may actually be voicing expressed doubt or fear, asking you things like, what if this happens? And what if that happens? Their voice tone, this is hard to pick up, but it might be high pitched, it might be tense or uncertain, but it definitely lacks confidence. And then this is a really big sign here. When they're giving us verbal cues, they might be saying sorry all the time. It's kind of a Canadian thing, I suppose, but if this is more than your average sorry, expressions of self-doubt, they're really questioning their confidence, over and over questioning. So young kids do this naturally. That, when my kids, especially my middle son, when he was about 3, over and over the same question. This is a bit different. This is repetitive, the same kind of question, and really, really hanging about with the parent or the caregiver because they need some reassurance. So those are things that we can see. And then they may be feeling things that adults could easily feel as well. Tightness in the chest, rapid or difficulty breathing, dizziness, racing heart, butterflies in the stomach, feeling of a lump in the throat, and just a general unease. And so when the child is telling you these things over and over, it's important for us to pay attention. It could be that emotional experience for them that they feel like there's a sense of unending doom or impending doom. They're irritable, they're overwhelmed, they worry, they fear, they dread, and their mental state, exactly what I think it was Karen who said, racing thoughts, not able to concentrate, an inability to focus, and feeling just out of control, difficulty coping. And so you can imagine, if you've experienced it yourself, you can imagine with a child who probably doesn't have the language to express it. So the biggest thing that we can do to help these kids is to bring empathy. And so really understanding what empathy is. Empathy is not feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is about trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person, in this case, who's feeling anxious, Try to imagine what that's like for them. And it's not about trying to stop them or tell them what else to do. It's about something like, I understand you might be feeling anxious. Let's, and then come up with some things you co-design with the student or the child so that they know that you're on their side. They know that you have empathy for them. And so, one of the biggest things, and you may have seen this before if you've had young children, especially, you may have seen it in their classrooms. But one of the things that we want to teach kids is emotional self regulation, because along with anxiety, can feel like they're out of control. They can't express themselves. And it often comes out in the form of unregulated emotion. So I want to teach my students, and you as parents teaching your children, about the zones. So we can literally teach them this, using this kind of chart. And if they are in the blue zone, it means they're feeling something like sad, sleepy, sick, or bored. But we don't want to just go for, you know what, I understand that you're feeling sad. Let's give them some choices. So they could choose to meditate, they could choose to rest, read a book, eat a healthy snack, do some stretching, etc. So all the things that are listed there. The next one is if they're feeling angry. So unregulated anger in a child can really, really impair them because it often gets in the way of their social emotional learning. They don't have friends when they're angry kids. It's hard for them to control the anger. Let's face it, for some adults, it's hard to control anger. And so we want to teach them about it. We don't want to say, by the way, with any of these emotions, we don't want to say, stop feeling that, or don't feel that, or don't cry, because you hear those kinds of things all the time. The truth is, going back to the physiological response of what we talked about earlier, it's important to know that the expression of emotion is healthy. It becomes unhealthy when it lasts for too long, and it also becomes unhealthy when it's socially inappropriate. So that child who's expressing anger at other people on a regular basis, we need to teach them skills. And so with anger, they might be angry, horrified, out of control, scared, but they can make a choice. They can take a time out. They can draw or paint. They can talk to their teacher or their parent. They can write about it, go for a walk, sit with emotions. That's an important piece. Both children and adults need to learn to sit with the emotion. It's okay to feel emotion. And like I said, if it lasts too long, then we might want to seek some help, but learn to sit with it because this too will pass. Sometimes they're frustrated in the yellow zone, or silly, or worried, or excited. So what can they choose? They can go for some exercise, draw or paint, talk to their teacher or parent, write about it, go for a walk, etc. All of the things that are listed there. And then finally, if they're in the green zone, we're good to go. They're going to have a good day. So they might be feeling happy or calm or focused and confident. And so this is their opportunity to get their work done, to do something extra, to help someone else, or read to a friend, write a poem. We can really go for this. So what I love is I've seen some teachers who have this zones of regulation posted, and somewhere nearby they have popsicle sticks that are blue, red, yellow, and green. And so the child can put their own popsicle stick in their little pouch with their name on it. So at a glance, a teacher can see, oh, this child is feeling blue today. So I may not want to push them so hard, but I'm going to give them lots of opportunities. But you could do that at home as well as a parent. You can put this up. I would be including a lot of literature, reading a lot of stories about emotions, and we are not at all hard up for literature. There is tons on teaching emotion. So you know your child is going to learn this in school, but you might want to reinforce it at home. So they could have their little pouch, or, a little button or a little rock or something where they tell you through that they're feeling sad or angry or frustrated. So this is an important one, the zones of regulation. So what you need to do is you need to know the signs. And so remember, uh, all of those looks like, sounds like, feels like signs. And then, as I said before, ask them to make a mind-body connection. So if the child is feeling angry, you might talk to them. You might try to calm them down, put them in the zone of regulation, but you might ask them, where are you feeling that in your body? And get them to concentrate on that. So let's say they have that sort of stomach upset, which is a common one. So then I want them to now just focus, because that focusing on the body piece is taking the mind away from focusing too much on that. So one of the big things, though, we have to always remember is you are a role model as a parent. Teachers are role models. So we want you to take care of yourself and model your coping strategies. Nothing wrong with saying in a calm way, I'm feeling angry right now, and here's why. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to take a time out and I'm going to read a book. So you're modeling for them how to self-regulate. Very, very important piece of this puzzle. So when we see behavior that's problematic or confusing, the first question we should ask is not how do we get rid of the behavior, because the behavior is a signal. It's telling us something. So we want to ask ourselves, what is it telling us about the child? And so we're going to look right now at listening, because listening is such an incredibly important piece of this puzzle. And truthfully, so I teach at the University of Toronto in the Faculty of Education. I work with people who are becoming teachers, and I also work in classrooms. So I'm seeing what's happening in classrooms. And I can tell you this idea of listening is gone by the wayside. So we really need to teach kids how to listen, and we need to model it for ourselves. So I love this Mandarin character that talks about listening. We listen with our eyes, ears, and our hearts. How beautiful is that? Of course, we listen with our eyes, unless it's culturally sensitive, because for sure that is a cultural trait. We listen with our ears, unless we're hearing impaired, in which case we're likely listening with our eyes. We want to listen with our heart, and especially with a child who's feeling anxious, or even a friend who's feeling anxious, we need to really let them know we have empathy for them and we're here for them. And of course, we're going to give them our undivided attention. So you are actually part of this equation. We listen with our eyes, ears, and our heart. We do not have our cell phones in our hands, constantly doing this while we're trying to listen. All of that has to go aside. And so we're going to look out for what they're telling us. And when they start to open up, we listen. So I want to introduce you to this. This is the work of Rudolf Dreikurs, and I really love this work. I teach this to my teacher candidates. So children, as I said, they misbehave, or they behave in ways that are trying to help us understand what's going on with them, especially the young kids, because as I said, they don't have the language often to tell us. So if a child is misbehaving, they could be seeking attention. That's a very common one. If they feel you're not paying enough attention to them, this is not they're trying to get extra attention. They're giving you a message. They need attention. They need that physical or emotional contact with other human beings. And so we have to be careful that we don't jump in and just assume it's all about attention, not a message, by saying, knock it off, stop doing that, stop crying. Instead, what we want to do is maybe ignore the behavior if it's constant attention, but we want to give them our full attention at other times. Catch them doing something good. We want to really make sure we are spending time with them, because I think attention is so important for kids. The next one that kids will do is they will try to seek their goal of power. This is a kid who doesn't feel they have influence in their environment. They want to have a measure of control, whether this is at home or in the classroom. They want to feel like they have a measure of control. And that can come out with pretty aggressive behavior sometimes. And it happens when they don't feel that control. An adult's behavior in response to that might be, you're not going to get away with that because you feel provoked or challenged. And what's going to happen there, if you start to fight back or meet them in that power goal, what's going to happen is that they will fight back as well. And I think parents and teachers getting into a power struggle with a kid is a mistake. They're not going to win because kids are pretty smart. So if you do get into that power struggle, it's going to increase the misbehavior, and it's only going to put the fight off for another day. So you might have to maybe remove yourself from the conflict. It could say, you could be thinking to yourself and saying to the child, you know what, right now we need a break from each other. Let's take a little bit of a time out. You go and do this and you go and do this, but don't fight and don't give in either. You're not about to give in. Instead, let's have this cooling off time. And when we're both cool and ready to talk, let's talk about it. What do you need? What's missing? What can I do? What can we do together? And I would say that for a child who is in power goal, I would be giving them lots of responsibility around the house so they can help you. They can do things, make decisions on their own. And for sure, I would be making sure they have a voice. So you're allowing them to talk about what's on their minds. Revenge is such an interesting one. I see it sometimes in classrooms. It's not one you see as often as you do power and attention, but this is a child who feels like they need to protect themselves from something, whether it's emotional or physical harm. Maybe there's been a threat in the environment. If you do that again, this is going to happen. And so the child is worried and they may try to get back at the adult. And so the adult is sometimes feeling, how could you do this to me? You start taking it on as your own problem, when in fact, it's actually what we want to do is understand the child's trying to tell me something. So I have to try not to be hurt, not to be angry, because if I give into that feeling and I start to fight with the child, that they're going to try to continue hurting. And so what we have to do as adults, whether it's a parent or a teacher, is we have to refuse to be hurt. We have to also avoid the temptation to hurt them back. This is never, ever going to be helpful. So again, we might withdraw from the conflict. Let's talk about this after we've both had a bit of a cooling off time, and above all, show love for the child. And then the last one there, we do see all the time, inadequacy or avoidance. This is a child who really lacks some self-esteem. They don't feel good enough. They don't feel like they're capable. And so they're going to withdraw, or they're going to give up altogether. And so what you have to think to yourself is, well, what can I do? But avoid the despair and pity. Kids do not need you to pity them. So what they need is a set of skills to move them forward. And so what you want to do is you want to understand, okay, I'm going to make a decision here to give you some baby steps. I might start building small skills. I'm going to be extremely patient with this child, because the minute I allow them to become too passive or to refuse to try, we're actually reinforcing the behavior. So we don't want to reinforce the behavior. We want to say to them, what can we do together to make this work? We are behind you 100%. Let's do this. You're going to model as well, which is always very important. So here are some ideas for you that you can try. So I would say that this particular idea is one of the most important things that you can teach. And I will be telling my teachers that I work with and teachers in school, we have to work on this with kids, because the truth is they're exposed to social media that is constantly negative. Uh, I mean, we can certainly gear them towards listening to interesting affirmative shows, but a lot of what they get their hands on is negative. And so they developed what we would call a fixed mindset. This is that last level there of the Dreiker's work, the avoidance and the inadequacy. So what we have to do is we have to teach them. Once we get in fixed mindset where we're saying things like, I can't do this, I give up, they throw their hands in the air. This is too hard for me. I keep making mistakes. I'm not worthy. I'm so stupid. No one cares about me. That's a very fixed mindset. And from a place of a fixed mindset, we're not going to move forward. So what we want to do is catch them. And by the way, catch ourselves when we are in a fixed mindset, because again, we are the role models. And so when we catch them with a fixed mindset, we want to turn it around, ask them, what else could I say besides I can't do this? So you could actually brainstorm with your child, have them put these ideas maybe on a chart paper or somewhere on your fridge, so that when you hear them saying it, let's talk about what else we could say. So instead of I can't do this, I'm going to keep trying. Or I give up. No, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try a different strategy. And again, model for your children. Model when you've had a chance or you've had the thought that you'd like to give up, but you tried something different. So I always give the example of before COVID, if I ever had any computer or phone challenges, I would always call one of my kids, come on over. I can't do this. I give up. I'm not going to do this. And so they would come over, but then of course, COVID hit and they couldn't come over. And so I figured out that I could watch YouTube and learn how to do just about anything. So what we're doing is just trying different strategies. This is too hard for me. It might not be, it might be hard, but it's not the end of the world. I can take more time to learn. And so I always say to parents, give kids examples from your own life of when you've experienced these kinds of things. I say it to teachers as well, because it's important information. So when you are feeling anxious, do you find it helpful to talk to someone about your feelings, or do you prefer to deal with them on your own? So just put that in the chat. Let me know what your thoughts are, or maybe you have a different strategy. Talking to someone. Oh, good. I have to say, I love the talking to someone. So I am a big believer that we need to, that old saying, get it off our chest. Because when we're holding on to these thoughts, we are in the sympathetic nervous system that I talked about before. It is not helping us at all because we are actually holding on to it. And eventually, if we hold on to that stuff too much, we will in fact get sick. So we don't want to do that. So we want to encourage our children. And again, we might want to have that idea that we are modeling and you're telling stories from your childhood. So here's another idea for you. Have the child draw a creature that represents their feelings of anxiety. So we would call that an anxiety monster. And so let them use colors and shapes to depict how it feels. Then ask them maybe to write or share a short description about what's happening. So if we were to think about a child who is experiencing trauma, we know that art therapy actually works really well. This is not therapy. We are not therapists, but getting them to draw it out, to make something funny, you might be painting or drawing along with them, but it gives them that opportunity to really get their feelings out, to let you know. And then we can take that drawing and we can say to them, okay, this is how you're feeling right now. Then maybe go about your day for a little bit and then later on go back to it. Here's how you were feeling this morning. Let's draw how you're feeling right now. So they're giving you an insight into how they're feeling right then and there in the moment. I do this with my students. I don't call, and my students are adults, by the way. I don't call it a worry jar, but I do call it a concern jar. And so you might have this jar somewhere around in the house, and every time they're feeling anxious, they can write on a small piece of paper and place it in the jar. And so this is an idea for them to just take it get it out of their head onto paper and put it in the jar. And so they can choose one worry at a time to focus on. Or you could also let the worry jar kind of build up, and then they can actually take it, or along with yourself, take all of the worries that are in there, and you can put them in a bowl of water so you're drowning the worries, or you could have an imaginary fire, or if you're fortunate enough to have a fireplace or a fire outside, throw them in, let them show, you can show them we're getting rid of these worries. But if you wanted to just do one worry at a time, so you let them build up, you pick a worry out, and then with your help, you're going to brainstorm what are some solutions or coping strategies that we have. So I'm worried, if the child puts, I'm worried about the test I'm having on Friday, we can take that, we can look at, all right, what are we going to do about that? The test is going to happen whether we're anxious or not. So we can give them strategies to study. I can help them draw it. I can help them say it out loud to me. I can practice with them. When my daughter was younger, she had extreme test anxiety. I taught her how to use a mind map to draw her ideas out. It was very, very helpful. Now she's an adult and she got over that test anxiety just by being able to draw it, make a map of what the content is that they need to study for. The next one here, I love this one. So it's called a mind jar. And I've got the instructions here. So I'll go through those in a minute, but let's just go back to the image. So you can see that it's an image. It looks a bit heavy because it's made with, I think there's alcohol, there's some glycerin in there and some sparkles. So when you shake it up, it's like a snow globe, but it takes a long time for it to settle. So it's kind of like a lava lamp from the old days, but we sit down, allow the child to make it. I would allow them to make it on their own. So they make the mind jar and then they can shake it up and put it down and watch it settle. And what we can teach kids is that actually a mind jar, the way it swirls around is how our thoughts often swirl in our minds. But we let them swirl around and then we watch them settle. I might also teach them a little bit of meditation about let's put our worries in a cloud and watch the cloud just drift away, sort of a mindfulness meditative experience. So here's how you're going to build this mind jar. And I'll go over it because you'll get the recording, I think. So a clear glass bottle, you can go to the dollar store, warm water with some glue because that slows it down, and then glitter or glitter glue, it makes it thicker. You can also put a little bit of glycerin in there as well, that helps. If you want to make it different colors, you can put some food coloring in. The glitter actually happens a little bit, the flow of it is better with a bit of dish soap. So fill the jar, add the glue, add the glitter and the food coloring, and then fill it up as much water as you need, being careful, of course, that it's not too high because they are going to shake the jar. Make sure the lid is secure, and then allow them to shake it whenever they need, can keep it in their room. I always encourage teachers to do this with their class. So if they have a peace corner in the back of their class or a calming corner, there's a mind jar back there, and the child can go back there and shake the jar and just watch it settle. A lava lamp is also excellent. You can get those. I think you can get them at Walmart. So I have my teacher candidates always do something where every time they're with me, they have to create some kind of activity for their colleagues that they can then use with students. And a couple of weeks ago, the group that was presenting did this, a pick-me-up pouch. And they had just bought these plain pouches and we got to color them, put our names on it, write on it, make stars, whatever we wanted with markers. And then everybody can choose what's going to go into that mind jar. So maybe a stress ball. Stress balls are great for kids who have ADHD as well. So they can squeeze it. They can make their own stress ball, by the way, with just getting a balloon, opening the balloon and putting rice or sometimes you can put sand or cornstarch. They can fill as much up as they like, then tie the knot on the balloon, and then it goes into the pick-me-up pouch. Sometimes kids can really respond to worry beads, and I've also made this with kids as well. So a pipe cleaner with some little beads, and they're just simply moving the beads up and down to help them calm down, because that touch as well as the focus is really helping them. Essential oils are great. You can get some that they're in tiny little jars, and the child just puts them in their pouch and they can smell it when they're feeling anxious. I love the idea of a family picture. Lots of little kids, especially in kindergarten when it's their first year at school, they get very anxious about school. I used to teach kindergarten, so I would have the kids come in and they'd bring a family picture. We'd put it in a baggie and pin it on the bulletin board. And whenever they were feeling anxious and missing a parent or missing a brother or sister, they could go and hold on to the picture. So this is something else that could go in the pick-me-up pouch. There are tons of fidget toys on the market. There are also things, because remember, we're making that mind-body connection, and that's what it does. Coloring books and crayons, somewhere where they can go. You know, you're feeling anxious right now, let's sit down and color. And, maybe spend just 2 or 3 minutes with the child, and then you go and get on with your busy day and let them stay there. So noise, most of us, I think, live in the city of Toronto. It's very, very noisy here. Noise is something that will really trigger anxiety in people. And so if we can get noise canceling headphones or earbuds so they can feel that sense of noise. I live right downtown Toronto and I don't experience anxiety very often. But as soon as I moved down here, I could feel that anxiety kicking in because there are sirens and fire trucks all around me. Have some comforting objects. So maybe they're really sensitive to touch and they like to touch something. So like a little fur ball, not real fur, but something small, a small tiny teddy bear. You can get all kinds of those things uh in toy stores, etc. There's lots of stuff that works for kids. So of course, if it's a little pick me up pouch, it's going to be a small teddy bear. I would also have them have water always nearby, because sometimes hydration affects our mood. So how are we feeling? We're feeling very, very dehydrated, and sometimes a couple of sips of water is going to help us. So that could be in the pick-me-up pouch, or you're just having it somewhere handy for them. So I want to share with you that I also do some courses on anxiety and some nurturing and emotionally intelligent children. And then the other one there is classroom management. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to email me and I'll tell, or you can go on this Teachable site, Hearts and Minds Matter Academy.teachable.com. And the nurturing emotionally intelligent children and the exploring anxiety in young people is actually designed for teachers and parents, and then showing them how they can work together. Because, sometimes they see things differently. You see your child at home, you see the child in that environment, the teacher sees the child at school, and sometimes they're not always the same. So if that's something that interests you, please feel free. So I'm going to stop right now to share and just ask, are there any questions that you might have or anything that you would like more information on? You can just write it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and I'll answer the question. Okay. All right. I'm just going to check the chat in case I just can't see it here. Okay. So I also will give you my email address, Jackie, here, let me write it in the chat. If you want to reach out, like I said, I have those. Oh, and you can look at the Hearts and Minds Matter website. And it was so lovely to work with you. This for sure is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because anxiety is on the rise. So I see a question. How would you go about dealing with a child anxious about death? So, Karen, can I just ask you to clarify, is it anxious about all death or death of a specific person? So I'll answer it from two ways. If it's a specific person and there's, people she knows dying and herself, recently her grandma's dog. Yeah. So again, like I said about emotional regulation, there's a tons of books on death. And they're really, really helpful. And I think it's about asking them, how do you feel about it? If they're anxious about their own death, you can talk about the fact that she's or he or they are healthy and that, there's no reason to fear the death. The dog passed away. We all pass away. You're not going to hide it from them. You want to be honest, but doing it in a careful, loving way. And I would definitely use literature because I think that is incredibly important. And you might talk about your own experiences. I had somebody pass away and I felt really, really sad, and that's okay. I felt really sad for quite a while, but then it went away. And I know I'm holding that person, even the dog. I know I'm holding that dog in my heart, and I have such fond memories. And maybe spend a little bit of time looking at the memories, looking at some pictures, but not for too long. We don't want them to get locked in, but instead, bring out the love, and I think that'll really help. Freddie the Leaf is a great book for little kids, if she's little. So again, thank you, everyone. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope you get to listen to the recording. Thank you so much. Bye.